All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm here live from the birdhouse, and with us today we have Matt Young from the Finch Research Network, and also the author of the Guide to Finches, which you can buy here at the birdhouse. Good morning, Matt. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on today, Liz. It's always exciting to talk to people that will listen to me talk about finches.
Well, we love talking about finches, especially as we go on in the winter months. We always tell people to keep your Niger feeders out because not only are the goldfinches around all year, but we might get some of these eruptive visitors. And that's what I am very curious about. And I'm sure other people are as well, what the finch forecast looks like for the winter months ahead.
Yeah, it's always exciting. We put out, Finch Research Network now has been putting out the Winter Finch Forecast the last 6 years. It started in the '90s with Ron Pittaway in Ontario. The new Finch forecaster is Tyler Orr. He's a board member of the Finch Research Network. Um, yeah, and we just put this thing out about 2 weeks ago. We always put it out towards the end of September to give people an idea what finches might be coming down from Canada in the eastern part of the country this year. So we do believe, Tyler does this incredible drive, 15 to 2,000 mile drive across the boreal forest in Ontario mainly, and a little bit in Quebec to assess food crops to the north. And that's kind of what determines whether these birds come down or not. And then we send out this questionnaire across, there's almost 100 people from Newfoundland and the Maritimes and Maine, all the way across the country to Alaska, British Columbia, Washington. And they give us an assessment on what these 15 key species of trees are doing across the continent. And that's how we put the forecast together. And as Tyler has said, and we put out the forecast a couple weeks ago, we believe this has the potential to be the best finch winter since 2020, 2021. And that was the superflight year when we had all the eastern finches came down in big numbers out of Canada that year. We'll see. I tend to think that it'll be an above average winter finch season. It'll be multi-species. I don't think it's going to be like an incredible year, but I do believe they're going to be around more than usual this winter. I mean, as everybody knows, these finches kind of come in flocks and they can be pretty kind of spread out across the landscape at feeders, but they're not going to be at everybody's feeder at the same time, obviously. That's kind of how finches roll, and that's the excitement about them. This winter finch forecast has kind of become one of the most highly anticipated articles to come out every year in the fall. Because it's like, to me, I always say to people, there's two things. It's like an accelerant into the system because these birds come down and it really can kind of boost seed sales when we have big, hungry flocks of siskins or evening grosbeaks or red polls coming down. But I also kind of always say it's like it's like Christmas morning or a holiday morning when you're opening up a gift. It's like, oh, what's at my feeder today? And you look out and you see these visitors from the north kind of bringing some color to our landscape here in upstate New York, which can be rather cloudy when we get into the winter months.
Yes, it can.
So,
So basically, when you guys look at the crops, the trees, is it if they're not producing, that's what causes the finches to come down further south? Is that right?
exactly. So it's kind of a twofold dynamic is, you kind of have multiple years of high reproductive success leading to high population numbers. And then the food crop, because food crops kind of tend to alternate between good year, bad year. When that bad year happens, the birds are forced down because the food in the local area can't really support the population. So, we do like the species we really think is going to I think we're going to look at our best red poll year for sure in 5 years. We used to get red polls more regularly, it seemed, in central New York or upstate New York. But red polls have already showed up in New York. They were here. We had a record. There was a record in August this year and a couple in September. and the previous early record for New York was October 3rd. So we should be on the lookout for red poles and siskins this winter for sure. And we think there's going to be a scattering of evening grosbeaks across the landscape. You know, evening grosbeaks, though, do tend to like those kind of remote, hillier areas. So they can kind of be, you know, a little bit more into the forested areas than out in the open areas. But again, all of these finches, as we know, if anybody's fed finches at their feeder, whether it's even goldfinches or house finches, they can really eat some seed pretty quickly.
And so what are the other species when we're talking about winter finches? What are the species that get grouped into that kind of?
Yeah, the core species are the red pole. Now, as Liz and I were talking before we got on the show here, red pole is now only one species. It used to be common red pole, hoary red pole. They were lumped as just red pole about a year ago. That's not to say you still can't identify hoary red poles. They're just now recognized at the subspecies level instead of the species level. So you have the red pole, the pine siskin, the purple finch, the two crossbills, and the two grosbeaks are basically the core winter finches. We believe there'll be some pine grosbeaks around this year in the New England. Do they make it? You know, an area that tends to get pine grosbeaks, because we're kind of, you know, it's one of the most northern of all the finches. Like red pole and pine grosbeak are the most northern, I would say. And one of the areas that gets pine grosbeaks, even in years that they don't make a big push south, but they'll end up one of the furthest southern spots in New York. Even in years you don't get a big eruption of them, is Webster Park, which is near Rochester.
Yep.
They'll get pine grosbeaks often before almost anybody else will. So it's a place to keep on everybody's radar as far as, you know, looking locally towards the Rochester area. Hopefully there'll be more than just the Webster Park and Adirondack birds this year. They'll be down for, you know, they tend to like, though, they don't really visit feeders much down near us. They do as you go a little bit further north. Adirondacks still visit feeders. They love crab apples in people's yards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some early arrivals, but when do these finches kind of start in numbers to come down to our area, let's say?
The peak time to watch for finches really is about right now, mid-October to those the first half of December. So the next 2 months, basically, between mid-October and mid-December, we'll have a really good idea of what is going to be around this year. And that's right as we kind of head into the Christmas bird count season. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. We should start seeing some grosbeaks. There's been evening grosbeaks. There was one outside New York City. There was one in Cape May already. There was one even further south than Cape May already.
And so if people do want to attract some of these winter finches to their backyards, what are the best foods that they could put out to maybe attract them besides the crab apples and things? Are there seeds that specific?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question. So, you know, evening grosbeak and pine grosbeaks, they're bigger. They have that much bigger bill. They love platform feeders or hopper feeders or tray feeders filled with black oil sunflower seed or any of the mixes that have a high percentage of black oil sunflower seed. They'll also eat the striped. They'll eat the striped because they have that bigger bill. Now, with the smaller finches, like the goldfinch and the red pole and the siskin, they like the Niger seeds. So the Niger socks and the Niger feeders are popular with those three. The tube feeders, like the sunflower tube feeders, the purple finches and the house finches like. Not many of the finches really, it's really just goldfinch, siskin, red pole that will eat that Niger.
Okay.
Regularly. That's not to say you can't see. I've seen a purple finch nibbling at a Niger sock every once in a great while, but they don't really feed on that. So any of the mixes with a high percentage of sunflower, you're going to get purple finches, house finches, and evening grosbeaks. And if you're lucky enough to the north or in New England, you can get the pine grosbeak on hopper feeders as well. Um, but like I said, the Niger feeders are really, it's those three species. Black oil though is kind of the universal seed for all these finches. They'll all eat the black oil sunflower seed.
And then sometimes, so when there are eruptive years with some of these birds, do other birds get grouped in there too? Like things like red-breasted nuthatches. We seem to get more of those in the winter months. Do they kind of follow the same trend, or can it be different?
No, they do. So that a lot of us always kind of consider I love red-breasted nuthatch. One of my all-time favorite birds. Just beautiful, kind of inquisitive. They have a kind of a spunky personality. But yes, they are. We kind of call them an honorary finch in a lot of ways. In fact, they're kind of a harbinger of. They tell us something. When we start seeing red-breasted nuthatches moving, and believe it or not, they'll start moving as early as late June, mid-July. When we start seeing these early movements of red-breasted nuthatches, it usually is a good sign for finches to come afterwards. And so, yeah, been a big push of red-breasted nuthatches into the area this year. In fact, right now, they're being found all the way to the Gulf Coast in Alabama, Mississippi, Florida. And that's not in numbers. That's not regular to see them that far south.
Oh, okay.
There's
Gotcha.
also a couple other species that we cover. We cover red-breasted nuthatch in the forecast. I suspect that's probably why you asked. It was like, yeah, we have red-breasted nuthatch in the forecast, but we also cover blue jay and Bohemian waxwing as well. Bohemian waxwing is not as much. Again, it's not a feeder bird really, but they love those crab apples like pine grosbeaks. It's not uncommon to see pine grosbeaks or Bohemian waxwings in parking lots of supermarkets that planted these ornamental crabapple trees, particularly again as you go kind of a little bit further north of our area. But you can see them, in kind of the big Rochester, Syracuse kind of latitudes in the same kind of areas. Now, blue jay, it's a moderate, kind of small to moderate flight is what we predicted for this year. And as we all know, blue jays can come and, a flock of blue jays can come and wipe out your feeders or wipe out your seed, just like evening grosbeaks can. Huge appetites. People that might not know it, we cover this in the book too. So this, Finch's United States and Canada book that I wrote with Lillian Stokes, it's been a blast. I've done, 27 talks in 20 states in the last 13 months. It came out just a little over a year ago. Lily does this amazing job. It's a book for everybody, really, and it really, quite frankly, I hear it all the time. It's really a book that's great for that backyard bird watcher because finches are such a part of our everyday life in backyards, whether it's goldfinches or house finches. But the nickname for evening grosbeaks historically, back when they were around in much, much bigger numbers, they were called grocery beaks. Yeah, because they have such voracious appetites for eating sunflower seed. And we have a project at the Finch Research Network where we're putting tags on birds and banding birds across the country to get an idea of why they've declined so much. It's 90% decline over the last 50 years of evening grosbeak. They do seem to be a little bit on the uptick again because we have had some years in the last 7 that they've been around in a bit better numbers than they were there I'd say from the mid 90s, maybe late 90s to about 2015. We weren't seeing many grosbeaks around at all. So,
do you guys have any idea of why they were on such big decline, or it could be multiple factors all at once?
It's very likely, as all everything we live in, it's kind of a complex, connected world. It's multiple things. The biggest thing though is very likely they are a spruce budworm bird. When I say that, we get these. Oops, sorry. We get these spruce budworm outbreaks. So, there we go. Sorry about that. We get these spruce budworm outbreaks across the boreal forest in Canada. every so often, and even in the northern tier states. There was two big budworm outbreaks actually three big budworm, no, two big budworm outbreaks in the uh, 1900s. So was it 19, I think it was 1925 to 1935, and then there was another um, one in 1965 to 1985. And budworm is a native caterpillar,
Mhm.
and as the budworm outbreaks occur, they are an incredibly easy and highly nutritious, rich in protein food source for feeding their babies. A lot of people might have heard, if you're a more of a birder, hardcore birder, a lot of times people refer to the budworm warblers, Cape May warbler, Tennessee warbler, bay-breasted warbler. The populations tends to fluctuate up and down with these budworm outbreaks. And we've been in a budworm outbreak in Canada, in Ontario, and Quebec for about the last 10 years, and that's probably why we're seeing this uptick
Oh, okay.
in evening grosbeaks. In fact, pine siskins and purple finches also readily feed on budworm as well. So, yeah, it's kind of a connected, fascinating thing. Canada does manage for budworm outbreaks because, it can kill the trees. And obviously, forest timber is an important kind of cash crop, source of economic, for jobs in Canada. So it's kind of a balancing act of like, how much do you treat? How much do you let nature do its thing?
Mhm.
So yeah, we're part of this. I'm a co-lead on the international working group for evening grosbeaks. It's an international team of about 70 of us from Canada and the United States trying to figure out what's going on with them.
Oh,
So
okay. And
yeah.
then sometimes do like you were talking about Bohemian waxwings. If you see a flock of cedar waxwings, are sometimes the Bohemian waxwings mixed in, or do they tend to kind of do their own thing and be separate?
And when they first start arriving in our area, when we get Bohemian waxwings, and really the northern parts of the state, kind of that Watertown to Potsdam, and also over in the Champlain Valley tends to get them earlier than anybody else. I think that's partly because there's a lot of buckthorn that grows up in those areas. Rochester actually gets them too earlier than most people when they do arrive in New York State, which can be anywhere from like November, December to April. But they tend to bigger numbers are later in the season. But when they first start arriving, you see them. The first ones are often mixed in with cedar waxwing flocks.
And the
Go ahead.
Bohemians are more gray and they're a little bigger
Yeah,
too,
they're
or are they about
grayer. Yep, grayer and bigger, and they have a really beautiful. They're really striking looking birds. They have a kind of a cinnamon color undertail covert. So if
mm,
you see underneath the tail, it'll be a cinnamon color. The interesting thing about I've watched this for decades now is when they first come in, they're mixed in with cedars. In the biggest Bohemian years, they tend to outcompete the cedars. So I've seen like several times scenarios where in March or February you see a flock or you see a few Bohemians mixed in with cedars, and a month later all the cedars are gone and you're just looking at Bohemians.
mhm.
So it's kind of interesting to watch that happen. Um, so yeah, the Lake Plain is good for them, and like I said, the St. Lawrence and the Champlain valleys are really good for Bohemian waxwing. They're a striking bird, so anybody gets wind of a flock, I highly recommend going out and taking a look at them because they're all the waxwings are beautiful, but
Yeah, yeah.
cedars are also pretty striking birds. Yeah.
And as far as the blue jay seasonal movement, can you speak a little bit about that? Should we expect to see or hear more blue jays around? I've been hearing them squawking like crazy recently, but I mean they always kind of tend to do that, it seems. But are they moving from one place to another, or is it just kind of random?
No, I don't know. It's a super interesting bird in that many years ago, I'd say probably 20 years ago, before 20 years ago, before like 2000. A lot of people just thought the Blue Jays we saw year round here in Central New York were probably just the same Blue Jays, but they are highly kind of eruptive. What we talk about eruptive migration tends to be irregular migration based on available food sources. So Blue Jays, like finches, are often following, particularly like crossbills and siskins, are following like spruce and hemlock crops and stuff like that, and red poles are following birch and alder crops, and pine grosbeaks are following, the fruit crops. Blue jays are an acorn specialist, so oaks, they hoard or they cache oak acorns, and when the oak acorn crop is low, they move in bigger numbers. So over the last 20 years, we've all realized that if you go to these kind of migratory spots, it's not uncommon in the fall and in the spring to see these big groups of 20, 25 blue jays moving by. And this became more known and more documented. And now we realize a lot of these birds do move around. If the acorn crop does not support them to the north, they're going to move further south to find other oak crops, or acorn crops, I should say.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's kind of fascinating to witness these blue jay movements, and they can be pretty remarkable. Several thousands of birds past places like Derby Hill or Braddock Bay up on the lakeshore. So we don't know. I think they're often first year birds, but I'm not positive on that. Like chickadees, sometimes we actually will see big movements, like eruptive movements, but they're almost always the juveniles that were born that summer that move in numbers. So, yeah, this is stuff that, Finch Research Network is interested in studying. And like I said, we have a grosbeak project, a crossbill project, a purple finch project. So,
Oh, how cool. And is this a kind of thing that you look for volunteers for, or you have your team kind of set?
well, we do have a board of directors made up of some of the most active finch researchers in North America. I'm working with teams of students and professors at Cornell and Madison, University of Madison, Wisconsin, and Oregon State, Washington State, UC Davis. But we founded the Finch Research Network on the kind of ethos of everybody can be involved in it in some way. That's hence the name network. In that, a lot of times when it comes to purple finches or evening grosbeaks or red crossbills, recordings are super important. People can make recordings with their phones now, upload them to Macaulay Library at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and that becomes the data, some of the data that we're researching, the different movements of these different call types of these finches, some of the finches. So what's implied with the call type, so red crossbills are probably the most well-known example of that, and that's kind of what was my spark bird and what led to the book with Lillian, is when they fly over, crossbills do this jip, 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 kip, kip, kip thing. And with that, it comes an implied ecological specialization for feeding more efficiently on certain conifers compared to other call types. So the species most common in the Macaulay Library at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, where I worked for 15 plus years, is red crossbill. There's over 34,000 recordings of red crossbill in the Macaulay Library collection. I should just add, I also work in the birdseed industry as well with aspen song wild bird food as well. So I kind of do some on the entrepreneurial side and also some on the research side at this point. So.
Is the Finch Research Network, is that a membership based structure, or if somebody wants to learn more about it, what's the best way?
We do, you can go finchnetwork.org online. There is a newsletter if you want to sign up. You can. It's $20 if you want to sign up. We do 4 quarterly newsletters. It's not necessarily what you have to do, but it becomes a funding source for us to do to give out small grants. We are giving out small grants to students across the country, whether it's undergraduate or graduate research grants. There's also, you can just join and get our blog updates too. So we do blogs, periodically as well. There's probably, I don't know, we probably do 20 blogs across the year at least, if, depending on how active of a Finch year it is. So, by all means, people visit the website, take a look. There's a lot of information there on the website, finchnetwork.org. I can also be found on social media. Matt Young, I'm the founder and president of the Finch Research Network. And we also have a Finch Masters on Instagram and also on Facebook.
Finch Masters? Is that what you said? I like
the Finch Masters. Yeah. So it's kind of funny.
Let's see. Looks like there's a couple comments here on YouTube. Steel Monkey says, "That's me, the backyard bird watcher." I would say that's mainly our customer base, are the kind of just the hobbyists, the backyard bird hobbyists. So you are speaking to the right people here. Let's see. And Cold Spring says pine grosbeak really showed up a few winters back in the UP.
Yeah, that's the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Yeah, they are much more common at feeders, or can be, in like Michigan and Minnesota. I don't know how widespread. Anybody, I'm assuming, can watch us here do this, right, across the country.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is the beautiful thing. But yeah. No, it's finches. That's the beauty of finches. We all have our garden variety of finches at our backyard feeders, but then we have these years where, like I said, it's almost like, a little bit like Christmas morning, where you wake up and you look out at your feeder and you're like, what is that? I haven't seen those in 4 years or 6 years or 8 years. I haven't seen red poles or pine grosbeaks or evening grosbeaks at my feeders in a while. So, yeah, we expect, we do expect there to be a good year of evening grosbeaks across New England, New York, the Upper Great Lakes, red poles, the same thing. Siskins probably will push at least in the mid-Atlantic and some of the southern states even. Purple finches will do the same thing. Red-breasted nuthatches are already to the Gulf Coast. Pine grosbeaks will be, probably pretty isolated here and there in some of the more hill towns in New England and in the traditional spots in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, Minnesota, maybe Wisconsin as well. So crossbills, they're not really a feeder bird, crossbills. Only in the years when they are really struggling to find natural food do you get crossbills at feeders. Well, the red crossbill will be around in the Northeast this year, wherever there's good spruce crops. And there's a really good, so the two big spruce crops or food crops that did form this year there was a big food crop from Manitoba westward. And then there was a really good food crop, particularly on spruce, from about the Adirondacks and New England up to the Maritimes along the coast. Everything in between, though, Quebec and Ontario, has almost no food at all.
Okay. Yeah.
So those birds are going to funnel down.
Interesting. Yeah. Looks like Cold Spring also says 2 winters ago, I had no less than 30 blue jays, total domination of the feeders, which I'm sure, I don't know if people can relate to that number of blue jays, but they do kind of dominate the feeders sometimes.
They can. I'm up to about 35. I have now 25 feeders right now. When I peak in the winter, I'll have about 35.
Wow. Do you live stream on them or anything? Do you have cameras on them? Or?
I do have some cameras on them. So I also am a consultant for BirdFeed, which has these feeders that have cameras on them, or nest boxes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't really done the live streaming too much. I should get into that though. I mean, every once in a while I do something, with the feeders in the backyard. Now the Finch Research Network, we do have some feeder cams. We had a great one in Maine there for a few years, but the person had had to kind of shut it down for a little while because he had some things going on in his life. We have had one in the Adirondacks. a feeder cam. We have one in Casper, Wyoming. We're going to have one in Alta, Utah this year that people will be able to view rosy finches if people love their rosy finches out west. The beautiful thing about feeder cams is, you can kind of sipping your coffee and experience feeders in other parts of the country or world and enjoy birds that you don't want to see in your backyard all the time because they might be in different parts of the country. I mean, we know that, and I always love to add this piece because I also worked in the social work field with special needs kids for years, is, there's just more and more and more studies coming out about how engaging with birds and watching birds, whether it's in your backyard, which is a lot of us, is really, really healthy for us to be like looking out, watching nature. I mean, for a lot of us, it's our only engagement point on a day-to-day basis with nature is looking out at your birds at your feeder. And they bring a lot of joy. Let's face it, they bring a lot of joy and pleasure, and it's good for our mental health. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. Was there anything else you wanted to add about winter finches or any other things that you've got going on bird-wise?
Not necessarily. I just, keep those feeders stocked. We do know that they, seed sales often go up once we get these years of bigger, finch numbers around with red poles and siskins and evening grosbeaks. And, just everybody keep your feeders stocked, keep them clean, and enjoy the winter and enjoy those finches at your backyard. Because, again, I always say to people, wellness for finches is wellness for you.
Yeah. We always recommend. We get questions all the time that we're about goldfinches all of a sudden disappearing from people's bird feeders, and some of the time it's because the feeders are dirty and the seed isn't fresh. So that can take care of most of it right there.
And the interesting thing too is I get this question: where all my goldfinches go?
Yeah.
Some people don't realize they're the only finch, and we go into this in the book. There's a ton of facts in the book, and again, it's for everybody. Lillian did these quick essays at the beginning of each species that we cover. There's a fair amount in there on research. There's a whole chapter on how to attract finches to your backyard. But one of the things I always, say about, this kind of thing is just, make sure, you keep those feeders full. But with goldfinches, they change their plumage twice a year. They're the only finch that does that. And sometimes I'll get a question like, where are all my goldfinches going? They're like, well, they're probably still in your backyard. They just look very different now.
Yeah.
As we head into the winter, they kind of have this more olivey yellow kind of tone to them, and they lose that bright yellow with the black on the forehead, the males. So, yeah, they're often out there, and we cover this in the book. So.
Awesome. Well, yes, if you guys are interested more to learn more about finches, we do carry Matt's book here, The Stokes Guide to Finches. So we do have that in stock. You've got some people saying thank you for your presentation today, Amanda's Native Garden Perennial Nursery. And also Ed is on and saying thanks. Great presentation, handy information. So yeah, cool. Thank you for taking your time. We appreciate it. And then we will keep our audience here updated about any kind of finch activity that we've got locally. So we will keep everybody posted. If they start to show up, we will absolutely let you know.
All right. Well, thanks again for having me on, Liz.
Thank you, and have a great week. And we will be back live here on Saturday. So until then, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.